Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. Pick up ability, where I talk about disability issues. Today I'm going to take another step back into history, back to Roman Antiquity, and to examine how Romans treated people with disabilities. It's a very fascinating topic, which requires a lot more research. But as you can imagine, there were some differences to the way we treat people with disabilities now and back in ancient Rome. But surprisingly, there are some similarities, in my opinion. I will be asking four questions about disability in ancient Rome. And I'm going to list them now so we can keep track of ourselves. First question would be, how did Romans define disability? Okay? Then the second question would be, what types of disabilities were in ancient Rome? Okay? And thirdly, what were the attitudes towards people with disabilities? And lastly, but not least, the law surrounding people with disabilities in ancient Rome. Disability. Right. Straight off the bat, there were no definition of disability, and the Romans themselves didn't see some disabilities that we would see now as disability. They didn't see. But with that said, there were disabilities or deformities, they would say, that they would recognize, and how they, depending on that disability and severity, it depends how they would treat that person. Okay? And depending how you got the disability also dictates how you were treated by society. So there was no real Latin word for disability in ancient Rome. The closest word that keeps popping up was a word called, let's speak my Latin, ostentrum, which translates loosely into the word monster. And that's interesting because that features in later on in the video, that word, right? Now, again, some disabilities were seen as less of a burden than others, right? Such as blindness versus deaf. And the reason for that is that the Roman culture of the time was that they relied very much on speech, and they relied very much on communication. So if you can speak, then you pretty much are accepted in life. If you can't hear or speak, then you're gonna have problems. Particularly when you want to buy stuff, because a lot of contracts or transactions were made on verbal acknowledgement. So that kind of hindered people who were deaf and mute. Now, the second question. What types of disabilities were in Rome? Well, again, as Romans didn't view all disabilities that we see now as disabilities. There weren't as many disabilities back in ancient Rome as we do now, but there were the obvious ones, such as being blind, such as being deaf and mute, and there was kind of Julius Caesar, I think, had seizures. So epilepsy maybe was one, and I say maybe because seizures can be triggered by anything, by other things, I mean, sorry. And then you had dwarfism, short stature, which supposedly the Romans didn't consider as a disability, okay? So that's an example of what we would consider a disability, and especially that ancient Rome did. And a great part of this was the fact that if you can move and get around and were mobile enough, and you can hold yourself in a chair, then ancient Romans weren't really fussed after that. Like, if you could do that, you weren't really disabled, they would say. So that kind of knocked out certain things like mental health or shaky hands. So, anyway, that's what the type of disabilities that were around. What were